Where do we find you today?
In London.
Okay, yeah. So last time it was LA in your houses from a
Yeah,
distance.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So fantastic new album yet again. I mean, how do you do it? How do you manage to do it for 51 years, 28 albums, and
We're
there's
just
hardly
good. We're good.
but everybody runs out of inspiration. I've actually come to the conclusion now that you're the only band left, and you started in the 1960s in your previous incarnations. The only band from the 60s that actually still makes good records or makes records. Full stop. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we appreciate it. We try hard. We your observation's right, I think, because most of the bands that are even still, out and about from, that era, or, kind of rest on their past laurels and don't really they do if they do a new album, it's kind of you kind of know what to expect, and it's not going to be earth shattering. Like we all love the Rolling Stones, but you kind of know what a new Rolling Stone album is going to be like in a way. And I think we're in a different situation where we don't have the luxury to kind of rely on our past and always want to be kind of pushing things as much as we can with what we're doing now. And so,
Also, we're
Yeah.
lucky that we genuinely like, even now, pop music and rock music, that we don't feel that we're in a position to write down to people. For better or worse in an emotional sense, but we feel on the same level as the people that are fans of ours. And so it kind of isn't like stepping out of what you feel is just natural for yourself. And we're really fortunate enough to have a kind of, in addition to people that have been with us for a long time, just a lot of younger people, and that really is motivational for us to try to kind of keep pushing things, knowing that what you're doing now isn't just nostalgic in some certain sense, but is modern in some other people's eyes.
I mean, is it a deliberate process for Sparks to never become a greatest hits band? Is this or is it just natural? You just permanently inspired that just stuff comes to you all the time?
No, and we really intentionally, that's, a lot of what we do isn't intentional, but the one thing we do is not try to avoid becoming a greatest hits band. We get offered tours of doing packaged things, different eras, 80s bands packaged together. And while they would be really uh, economically lucrative, it's just something that sits wrong with us and kind of would be paralyzing in a uh, in just a creative kind of way. So that is an intentional kind of step that we make. So much of what we do isn't, but that definitely is, and not looking back at what we've done before. I mean, obviously we have a sensibility that's there, and it's not that's some nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do about that, but we do make an intentional attempt to avoid looking backwards.
I'm guessing here, but also you work hard. You work hard at the whole thing, creating Sparks world. Musically, sartorially, gig wise. The whole thing seems to be seems to be a very 24/7 process.
yeah, yeah, we're engaged all the time. Yeah, yeah, and just the whole thing of everything is important in its own way. Like not only I mean, the music's obviously the most important thing, but the album artwork is important. The videos are important, and the live presentation is important. So it's all kind of part one in the same in a way. And so it's something that's, we feel it has to be. All of it makes up kind of the universe that Sparks created.
mean, yeah, I watched the Edgar Wright documentary, and it's great, but it's what is it, 2 hours? And I always say this, but you know less about Sparks at the end of it than at the beginning.
That's yeah. Well, he did a good job. Then the managed to fill over 2 hours and still keep some of the mystery and
Yeah,
mystique. But
that's
we,
what it's one of the great things about Sparks is, despite being a fan for oh my god, nearly 50 years, you're still a very mysterious band, which I really love. Yeah.
oh,
Well,
thank you.
thank
Yeah,
you.
no, it's hard to, we feel always too that the most important thing is knowing what we are via our music and via what you see if we're on TV or if we're performing live or via the album cover artwork, that tells you the best things about and the most important things about who we are, and that anything else isn't that important really to know who we are. So that if you know those things well, then you do know about our you do know us in depth.
So do you kind of, I mean, in real life, do you sort of switch on and off from Sparks? You know, like, from the film, and I'm sure you probably made this bit up, but it seems like every day, Russ, you go around to Ron's house and you do the music all day, and that's how you presented it. Is it a bit where the door shuts and you go back to normal life, or is it all day you're just in Sparks world, which would sound like a good world, really?
Well, I mean, it isn't like kind of something that we particularly turn on and off, but we do have separate lives. It's just that we're also kind of so passionate about what we do that we're always kind of open to new ideas, even when we're not sitting down and working on things. And so, in a way, it's both we are and aren't, kind of in that world all the time. I mean, obviously, we have to eat and sleep and all that kind of mundane stuff, but we're we're always kind of switched on as far as like being receptive to kind of new ideas, and we're fortunate enough now, especially after the Annette film, to have kind of other arenas to be operating in uh, that also draw kind of from that are creative endeavors that are kind of a little bit off from what we do as Sparks, but that require real attention. So it's it's kind of a case of one or the other. I mean, we don't go home and put on blue jeans and start playing bluegrass, but we're we're we obviously have some off time. We're lucky enough that when we're on tour, and even during promotion times, we travel enough where we don't feel the need so much to take vacations that are, to exotic places, because we're going to exotic places all the time, and we give ourselves enough time to be able to kind of experience those places in kind of, I don't know if you just in as a tourist, and we love being tourists in that way, but we also like uh, having kind of a direction as opposed to figuring out an itinerary on our own.
Mm. And also famously, brothers that get on in rock music, and famously there's another pair of brothers out touring this year. We don't always get on, and it's I think of all the long list of rock band brothers and bands, they always fall out, but it just seems like you're an inseparable pair. And is that? I mean, I'm sure that's wholly natural. And it feels like that's how life is. And being brothers, is it an advantage or a disadvantage? Can you read each other really, really well? Are you different facets of the same diamond in a sense?
Yeah, well, I mean that's why it makes it easier for us because we do know the process when we're working and don't have to ask questions, and um, we do, we both have a similar goal for what we want to be doing, and so I think if we weren't brothers, it would be a completely different situation. And we're puzzled at how all the other brother acts, seemingly all the others, don't get along, and that's what's surprising to us.
And also when we work in the studio, sometimes we write things now, since Russell has a studio in his place, not just only in the traditional kind of way, but just sitting down and fooling around. And if it were like with a stranger, you might be, at least from my standpoint, I'm really inhibited by looking like I'm making a fool of myself. But we can do that without there being kind of any kind of consequences, and we do things that are you kind of think, well, that turned out to be kind of stupid, but sometimes those things turn out to be something that are really good. And so, but we're not afraid to kind of do things to make ourselves look foolish in the studio in a musical sense, just because sometimes it leads to something where you might, at least for sure in my case, I would feel inhibited to be sitting in a studio with somebody, even if you'd worked with them before, but that, well, I don't want to look stupid in front of this person, and I don't care if I look stupid in front of Russell, which I often do.
And are you quite different? I mean, you seem quite different when, on stage. Obviously, only brief interview situations. You seem, and is that an asset as well? You sort of fill in different parts, and are, in a sense, sparks a whole. It's a symbiotic whole.
Yeah, exactly. The roles don't overlap. So, I sing and do all the recording stuff and mixing, and he's more, doing the playing, and the songwriting for the most part. So the roles don't overlap, and so that even makes it like we both, we don't want to be doing the other person's job, so it makes it easier for us. Yeah,
and also we don't feel like we have a goal outside of Sparks, so that we'll feel fulfilled musically somehow. That this is really, obviously working in film is a different area, but we still feel that there isn't anything soul that either of us could attain that we can't kind of fulfill within Sparks. We don't feel kind of somehow pushed down. I'm not allowed to do what I really want to do in some.
I mean, is there ever ideas you just go, well, I can't do that. I'm not doing. No way I'm going to sing that. No way I'm going to play that. Or is it always you kind of go, yeah, I don't know where that's going, but it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we know that I mean, I don't think there's ever that many far-fetched ideas that aren't something that can pan out to be something good. So, just I don't think either of us would come up with something that objectionable. There's small things that, the sound of that, whatever, that drum should be this or that, but those aren't that important issues. Yeah.
I got spoiled early on too, because I realized that Russell can kind of sing anything that I write that most singers couldn't in one sense or another, either from the meaning of the lyrics, but more so from just the technical aspect of some of the melodies. And so I know that it's a challenge, but I know that he can kind of come through on any ideas that might come up.
Yeah, I mean, I've often noticed that sometimes I like the lyrics complex and really packed and sung very melodically. I mean, that must be a challenge, mustn't it, Russell? Do you kind of go, can you not just put a few less words in that line?
Exactly. Well, sometimes you hope for that so you can find a spot to breathe within the song, So, but it's a challenge in a good way, I think. Yeah.
He's lucky. There's a song like "Long Red Light" on the new album where he doesn't have to kind of remember too much.
Yeah.
That was another thing I wonder when you did the all the albums in a row. Was it in 21 days, something back for those years ago? How did you remember all the words?
Yeah, well, we rehearsed for 4 months for those shows, and it's a task. It was something we're proud of, but we probably would want to do it again just for the
Because
amount of commitment and the amount of stress that it caused, and having to do one album a day for 21 straight
well,
days.
it's 28 now, isn't it? So
It would
people
be it
to
would be
remember.
much harder even now, obviously. Yeah.
And some of the albums were so short that we were doing B-sides in order to pad out the set. So it was additional songs to the 21 that we had out at the time. It was, it felt like a sense, you had a sense of accomplishment after you did it, but also a sense you never want to do this again.
It was a very Sparks idea, I thought. Quite brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like
Russell,
diving into,
yeah.
oh no,
So yeah, one of the great things about Sparks is the songs could be about very micro situations. You know, like a new album, like a backpack, or the last album, a latte, or whatever. Little sort of snapshots of life that kind of mean everything, and you get the lyrics presented to you, Russell. And what I've always loved about this is how emotive and operatic your vocals are, really moving sometimes about things that ostensibly are just like little Polaroids, aren't they?
Yeah, we like having some of the songs being those little, vignettes that are very detailed about maybe a small subject matter, a small idea, but then kind of by treating it over 3.5 minutes, it takes on a sort of a different meaning, or it becomes kind of more almost like a short story in a way, or a short film. So we kind of like that, where you can take an idea that's kind of too small in a way, but by the fact that you're treating it in such detail, and it gives it a different kind of importance to what it actually is.
I mean, do you
also that it maybe have a subtext to it that is beyond just that detail, and so it kind of has more. It's more richer than just a song about a backpack.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I mean to me that's the core of the genius of the band, really, isn't it? It's the tip of the iceberg is a song. There's all this other stuff going on behind it, the little nuances, the subtleties. And
You said it, not us.
yeah, safe to say that. And there was a discussion about what it's about, or do you just because you're brothers and because you're close and because there's a symbiotic thing, you just innately understand, Russell, when the lyrics are laid out there and I don't know, it's a song about, like a new album about a freeway. You go, yeah, I get that. I know exactly what he's trying to say.
No,
Or,
well, I do. So, sometimes I have to read it 2 times to fully grasp what it is. But I relish, getting to see, lyrics that are not typical and not kind of conforming and not kind of being cliched lyrics. And I think that's something that's special. So uh, I might moan about how many syllables get thrown into some of the words, but in the end, it makes the songs that much richer, I think.
I mean, Rob, when you're writing the lyrics, do you think of them in Russell's voice in your head? And the way when he sings it, the way it would add a drama to these kind of lyrics.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm thinking of his voice specifically, but I'm writing them with a sense that they can be done, maybe. So, in a sense, I suppose that's writing it through his voice, but I'm not. I'm not maybe specifically thinking of his voice, but just that the ability that he has the ability to be able to perform well. Perform kind of minimizes what it is, but just that he can do those song. So in that sense, I'm writing for him, knowing in the back of my mind that there aren't any other people that could do that.
Yeah, the wordability there. I think. How do you keep your voice like that? I mean, last time I saw you play Manchester Albert Hall, about I think it's about a year ago. We're all
Mm.
stood there going, how does he still sing like that? It just seems.
Yeah.
But most people's range goes a bit, of course, which is okay. That's fine. But your range seems to be the same, and it's really, and also it's a very physical show, and you never
Yeah.
seem to lose breath, and you're not just singing normal style, are you? I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of work going on in that voice, so you're just
Yes.
lucky.
No, just lucky. Yeah. No, it's all of those things you mentioned. It's a lot of work, and yeah, it's pretty high powered, the shows, and but just, we just want to be able to present the songs in the way they were, originally intended, and not have to cheat by lowering the keys or things like that, because it ends up sounding different if you do that. So it just a lot of care to try to, a lot of care, and then some luck, I guess, too, and making it the singing be hopefully pretty good representation of what it is on the albums.
Another thing when you watch you live and you play music from all different periods of Sparks, it all sounds contemporary as well. That's another sort of odd thing, never it never sounds like, oh, there's a really old song. It sounds quite dusty and old. It all kind
No,
of fits. Yeah.
no, we found that out too, especially when we did the 21 Nights thing, that a lot of the older albums didn't sound old to us. They actually sounded contemporary, especially doing them in a live context. And so that's why we're happy now when the live shows are really varied between brand new songs and some pretty obscure ones off of albums that may have been less visible, and even then the really old kind of more classic songs, that it all sounds of a piece, and it doesn't sound like, oh, there's an old song and there's a new song. And I think if someone isn't even that aware of Sparks and they come to a Sparks concert, they might not even know the eras that some of the songs are from, and we're happy about that.
I mean, when you start working on a new album, do you, I'm sure you don't do this, but do you think this time we're going to go slightly in this direction? We're going to react to the last album, say 3 albums ago, you maybe it's a more keyboardy one, then let's do a bit more guitar on this one, or a bit more electronics on this one, a bit less electronics, or is it you just write the songs and they suggest they just find their own direction?
Yeah.
No, it's the latter really. We start just from the individual songs that are written, and they kind of take you kind of are aware at a certain point of what is going on in a general sense. I mean, the only times we've ever kind of made a conscious decision to go in a certain direction were with the Number One in Heaven album, and also with maybe with Little Beethoven, where we were kind of trying to break with traditional instrumentation in songs. But in general, and it holds true with the new album, where we started just with writing songs, and then they kind of take on. You realize after a while there's a certain general character to things, even though there's a variety to what we're doing. So we don't kind of think along the lines of making it more keyboard orientated or that. I mean, we're always listening to other things as far as uh, hearing new sounds and new kind of techniques, and so we try to incorporate things that are things that we can use within the song, but not in a way that's other than just a technical kind of thing. We're always trying to add new sounds to our arsenal, and we kind of feel that we have a more of a fluidity with working with within different genres, just because we worked in so many different things, like a band format and electronics and using strings, and so we can kind of incorporate whatever works for that particular song.
I mean, is there a point when you start to realize Because each album does have a sort of vibe or a sound to it. Is there a point when you start to realize what that is? Is that when, is it after you mastered it and it's ready to get released, or is it during the process? Like, because this album, it's slightly more minimalistic. It's a bit more space in it than the last album. They're all slightly different, aren't they? They're all little snapshots of a period of time. And at what point do you become aware of that yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't become aware of it, I think, until you completed the album, and then you kind of sit back and say, "Oh, that's what it sounds like," and it does have its own character. This album, it really is different than the previous albums, and but it's comes kind of after the fact. We just kind of go in and record, wanting to do something that sounds striking in whatever way that is, whatever that means for each particular song. And then at the end, when we have enough good material, then you can kind of sit back and sequence the album. Then you realize what it is that
Mm.
sounds like. Even to the extent of calling it Mad, it seemed to really fit for the album specifically, and it kind of fit also for what's going on in the general atmosphere today, everywhere, and especially in good old America.
I know it's funny, isn't it? The lunatics have taken over the asylum. So, so do you see the albums almost like in a filmic kind of way? Because you're massive film fans, and do the songs themselves and the albums almost take on 3D kind of filmic kind of feel?
Yeah, yeah, no, they do, and both sonically and then lyrically, they are, you know, they are oftentimes kind of like little short films, and it's a way of doing movies that are where you don't have to find a huge budget to be able
Yeah.
to create it, and so you can create little mini films in an audio kind of way. The lyrical content are kind of another feeling, another meaning too. So,
I mean, in many ways, the lyrics, Ron, they're like French films, aren't they? Which is great in French films where not a lot happens, but it's about the detail, and it's a clock ticking in the background for 10 minutes, and it sort of says everything in the stillness, and in that moment of time, the tiny little details are exaggerated and they tell the story. And is that kind of what you're trying to do? Well, not trying, but it's actually what you do with the lyrics with Spark songs.
In a certain sense that it's kind of that there are things that are implied that aren't necessarily uh, shown, and by just you focusing on that particular thing, then it becomes ultra important if it all works out correctly. I mean, in American films, things are always kind of exactly spelled out what's going on. But I like the thing where sometimes there's that it takes something for the viewer, in this case the listener, to kind of interpret what's going on rather than just spelling everything out literally.
Yeah, there's no car chases. Well, sometimes there is actually.
Well, yeah, occasionally, but yeah, no, no, and then also just the dialogue in a lot of American films is kind of explanations of things or telling what a backstory is, and I always detest. I mean, I like American films, but I detest that thing where somebody is saying something as opposed to just showing it in a certain way, and uh, so in a song, we're kind of trying to avoid that particular, whatever the equivalent of that is in a song.
Trusting the intelligence of the listener.
No, exactly. And we're fortunate enough to have people. It isn't like an intellectual audience, but it's an audience that understands that approach to songs. And I think that that's a healthy thing. You know, we're writing songs, I think, that in a certain way they're not they're what we aren't hearing in other kinds of from other kinds of artists, and so it's trying to fill in the gap of this is what we really uh, feel like we're missing in
Mm.
music today.
Do you think it'd be fair to say you had more of a European aesthetic? I know it's often been said that you're the greatest British band that America ever produced.
No, well, there's, I think we're just comfortable being in Europe. We spend a lot of time and we like, we like, we always consider ourselves kind of universal, that we're not typically American, but we're not also from here either. So it's kind of, we're citizens of the world in a way, and somehow that comes through, I think, in the music and just our manner and everything we do. Yeah.
Although from a British perspective, there isn't the humour is quite American as well. There's always a humour at play in Sparks.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. And, you know, people say, well, it's, there's British humor and there's American humor, and they're not the same. But we just think it's kind of, there's this good and bad humor, and there's good humor here in the UK, and there's good humor in America, and there's bad humor in the UK, and there's bad humor in America too. So we feel like there's less of a distinction between, the subtleties, and it's just more whether it's quality of what it is, the good or the bad.
We also think it's important that it be seen as more than just a funny song, but that there's maybe another, occasionally bittersweet side to it, or something that adds an extra texture to the song than just being a novelty song about some silly thing.
I mean, do you deliberately curveball it sometimes by making a serious song have a humorous aspect to it as well? Like new album, there's serious songs and there's pathos in it, there's sadness in parts, but also you call the album Mad and do a completely mad album cover, which is great. I love it. But is that like a deliberate thing as well? Or do you just like all the different facets? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, just that it is trying to kind of, complicate things in some.
I mean, from day one, I don't think anybody in the UK could work out how serious you were, which I liked as well. Again, it's part of the mystery, and it's there was a seriousness to it, but also it was funny and it was off-kilter and unsettling. Again, a film. I think again, is this a filmic thing?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Yeah.
You got you're making a film, a musical. I read somewhere the other day.
Yeah,
so
we have,
this kind of ties up all these loose ends, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, we have another movie musical we're working on now that we've written the screenplay for and all of the music, and it's going to be directed by John Woo. We're really excited that he was exposed to what we're doing, and he's always wanted to do a musical, which was surprising to us. And he came over, heard all the music, read the screenplay, and really loved it. And so he's on board with us now for this new film, and we're just having the producers of the film are just they're pounding the pavement to get the budget that we all need to make it really special. But it will be something special, guaranteed.
Oh yes, I know that. Yeah. So brilliant. Well, thanks for your time. It seems like you got a bit of a rush, but
Yeah.
I'll see you in Manchester at the Apollo.
Great.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks a lot then. All right.
Take care. All the best.